Um, I had sent two files. One of them is longer.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that,
Oh, it was reversed. I wanted the longer one here. I didn't see. Okay.
okay,
All right. I'm going to start with this.
yeah, I get you another one.
I'm so sorry I didn't notice.
No, because, Eden told me that this was like,
No, this is for over there and that is for here. But I'm going to get started. I'm just going to start to introduce my subject and then we have a few more texts coming. Hi. So Lech Lecha. This is the parsha of the beginning of Abraham's story, where he is right. He and Sarah and their nephew Lot are journeying from Ur and then from Haran to Canaan. And I want to look today at a really particular incident in his life that suggests story before the story, because that's something I'm often interested in. Is how is where are we starting the story and what's behind the story? So I want to focus on a scene that's a little bit later in the parsha, but that in some ways relates to things that happen earlier than our Lech Lecha, than Abraham's going forth. So on your sheet, yeah, I really wanted the longer one, but okay. So let me set the stage. I'm going to tell a little bit of the parsha just so that we have a sense of the whole arc of the story. Receiving some mysterious call from the divine, Avram, his wife Sarai, and his nephew Lot and their people set out for Canaan. And when they arrive, they're basically nomadic. Like they go from place to place, they build an altar here, they camp here, they go somewhere else, they build an altar there, they camp there. At a certain point, they go down to Egypt because of a famine. They have a kind of weird incident in Egypt where the Pharaoh mistakenly marries Sarah, and then they have to untangle that. And then later on, Abraham and his nephew Lot separate, and they both have flocks, they both have shepherds. There's starting to be conflict, and so they separate. It appears to be amicable, but it's not exactly like a family divorce, but basically Abraham says, look, you go your way, I'll go my way, we won't fight with each other. And Lot, Abraham says, you choose. So Lot chooses the plain, and in the plain is the city of Sodom. And that's where Lot chooses to live. Abraham goes to live in the hill country. This is all set up for what we're going to look at. There's a war. It's a big war. There are 4 kings against 5. During the war, captives are taken. Abraham's nephew Lot and his family, his wife and daughters, right, are taken. Abraham, who somehow got military experience during this story, we don't know exactly how. Thank you so much. This is really great. Yeah, this will give us a little bit more context.
Hey, Rabbi Joe, while I have you,
Yeah,
could you put your mic a little bit forward, push your mic a little bit away from you?
away from me. Is this
Yes,
better?
I know. Words I never thought I would say. Could you just speak for me a little bit more?
Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled. Hey,
Yeah, I
Lavan.
think it sounds a bit better. Yeah. People online, I think it sounds a little less echoey.
Yes?
Awesome, great. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you.
Great. If there's another problem, just interrupt me and say. All right, good. So you can save your shorter, your 1 page sheet for later. We're going to use it in shul. But I wanted this longer one. All right, so we have the war, we have captives. Abraham summons his allies. He's developed some friends in the region, and they go with him. He fights against the kings who have captured his nephew and his family, and he frees them, and he brings them back. And on the way, he acquires spoils from the war. So this is the scene that I want to look at. So if you look on the first page of your sheet, folks online, you probably have the shorter one, but that's okay. we'll be looking at Genesis 14, which you have. So our first verse, right, Avram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all of their possessions that they had obtained. By the way, well, we'll take a look at that in a second. And all the people they had acquired, literally all the people they had made, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they came to the land of Canaan. Rashi, based on earlier traditions, says that the souls that they had made actually refers to people that they had brought to their spiritual point of view, right? People they had converted, right? That Abraham converts the men, Sarah converts the women. So I mention that only to say that the Midrash assumes that this is a spiritual movement, right? It's not just an emigration/immigration, right? It's a movement. Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, great. That's important for what's about to happen. So if you look in Genesis 14, which is the text on the bottom of the first page. And I'm gonna read it because I'm next to the mic. When Avram heard that his kinsman's household had been taken captive, he mustered his retainers born into his household, numbering 318, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. This, by the way, is an anachronism. It wasn't called Dan yet. Dan had not been born yet. At night, he and his servants deployed against them and defeated them, and he pursued them as far as Hova, which is north of Damascus. He brought back all the possessions. He also brought back his kinsman Lot and his possessions, and the women and the rest of the people. So this is actually a captive redemption story, right? Which we might relate to. When he returned from defeating Kedar Laomer and the kings with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, which is the valley of the king. So there's a kind of where did they meet at the end of World War II, right? It's like there's like an armistice negotiation. And then we have this scene, which is very interesting from a spiritual point of view. And King Melchizedek of Salem, who, by the way, has not appeared in this story, but suddenly pops up. He has a long name, which means righteous king. King Melchizedek of Salem, the sages think that this is Jerusalem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of God Most High, a Kohen El Elyon. He blessed him, saying, "Blessed be Avram of God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your foes into your hand." And Avram gave him a tenth of everything. So I want to talk about this character of Melchizedek, because this is a little weird from what we've been told, right? We've been told, right? Our tradition often portrays Avram as the first person to think of a single God, right? As completely, developing this idea out of observing creation. He had no teachers, right? He figured it all out on his own. And all of a sudden, we have Melchizedek, who's a king, who's priest of God Most High. What happened? Who is this person? Is this the same El, right, that Abraham is worshiping? It appears so, because Abraham is willing to worship with him. And not only does he pray with him, but he gives him a tithe. Abraham treats him like a priest, right? In the same way that in Leviticus, people are going to come with a tithe, right, of their produce, right? Abraham takes a tithe of what he's acquired during the war, right? And he gives it to Melchizedek. Right. And there's kind of a ritual feast. Right? There's bread and wine, just like we would make Kiddush and Hamotzi, right, at an important event. So we're going to explore some traditions about this, but I'm first curious to hear what people in our room and people online. I think, anybody can talk or share in the chat. What does this make you think of? Like what appears to be going on here? What changes our view of Abraham or this story, this Lech Lecha story, when we look at this?
this speaks to, I'm sure, my lack of Jewish education growing up, but I'm always surprised when anyone's engaging in a military battle or any kind of skirmish that sort of got edited out of my Reform Skokie Judaism.
Yeah, they don't teach about this a lot, but there's this whole chapter about, about Abraham engaging in this battle, which he doesn't ever do again. Like this is the only kind of military story about Abraham, but all of a sudden he's got warriors. Like it's interesting, right? And it suggests this is an environment where if you're going to live, it's a tribal environment, right? Where everybody kind of develops their own, right? Their own protection. It's not like there's a single king with an army, right? Everybody has their own armies, I guess. What else strikes people? Yeah.
Well, and I'm going to say this might be far.
Mike, can we?
Yeah, although I'd rather not broadcast. Nothing saying it. Anyways,
on the issue of who had an idea first, it just, in my past, I knew somebody who was really well known in the computer, the internet, the development. I mean, this is way off key, but
no, keep going.
The internet. I knew this person very, very well. And I knew this period of development very, very well. But when the history is written, many things are ascribed to this person that are an inflation of what happened, because we like to create a story that is clear and concise, and usually it's messier than that and more people are involved. That is just sort of an off the top of my head addition, because we need to have a solidification of a story. I hope that's okay to say.
It's great to say. Will you push me with my phone? Thank you.
And a hero. A hero to organize around.
Right. That was good. It's actually a point that I wanted to make about this story. Right. It's a little bit like the Moses and Jethro story. Right. Here's, big hero and originator of the idea, and yet there's a teacher behind them. Right. So here's somebody who already seems to know about God, who has a whole relationship, a whole ritual, right? He's a priest, right? And so it appears that it wasn't only Abraham's idea, right? And the tradition acknowledges that. We're going to look at some midrashim about it. So that kind of gives us a different notion, right, of Abraham's context, right? That there is this older tradition, right, of which he seems to be some part. Great. Yes, please.
There was also Amy's online. I also saw that Jay was raising his hand. So yeah.
Terrific. I'm going to come to online in just 1 second.
I had a question. First of all, I've seen this 1,000 times. I never thought about it once. So thank you, which is amazing. But when he left, why didn't he go to Melchizedek?
Great question. Yeah, and probably great story if we started telling it. Right. So what's the relationship, right? And why is he wandering around on his own if there was already somebody who's a priest of El Elyon? So one of the answers might be, right, that this story is not completely consistent, right? This is a compilation of a lot of different stories, right? So we might not be getting we might have a thread in which Avram is the originator, right? And another thread where actually maybe there are other people who are interested in El Elyon. So that's one way to understand it. But we're going to something interesting relates. Let's come to online. I guess, is it Amy?
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
Before I even say anything, I would like to be sure that we dedicate our study to the memory and elevation of the soul of Arthur Waskow.
Oh, gosh, yes. Yes, thank you for that. May his memory be a blessing, and may his neshama have an aliyah. Thank you for that, Amy.
Yeah. I've read where Melchizedek is Shem.
We're about to get there, but yes, go ahead.
Okay, so why was this gentleman just asked the question, why was he headed? Why did he head for him? I believe that Abraham was a descendant of Shem. And so who would have known? I mean, Shem being the son of Noah and Noah having direct contact with God, Shem, of course, would have known about God because his father knew about God. And the other thing is, this is where who told Abraham that that Lot had been captured? It was Og, my favorite character, and it is because of this that Og lives so long and survived the flood, because he would do this. Now it wasn't just Abraham in the battle, it was the battle of the 4 kings against the 5 kings, and
Right.
Sodom was one of those 4 kings. But it wouldn't be very, if we knew that you know Abraham had been under Nimrod, he would have, they knew about military tactics, and he would have, if he had been a great military general and he won a war, big deal. The fact that he wasn't, is what makes it miraculous.
Thanks so much, Amy. I think there was another comment online.
I lowered my hand.
Okay, great. All right, so let's proceed along the lines that Amy is suggesting. And then let's look at the middle of page 2. And Melchizedek, right? So this is Rashi. There are many traditions like this, but Rashi says it concisely. He comments on the name Melchizedek. A midrashic explanation is that he is identical with Shem, the son of Noah. This is very typical of Midrash. When they see a character and they don't know who they are, they say this character must be somebody we already know. So when we get to Shiphrah and Puah, the midwives to the Hebrews, and they haven't been mentioned before, they say, oh, this is Miriam and Yocheved. This is very, very typical of them, that they'll see a character, they don't know who that character is. They'll say, oh, this is a person that we do know. So Melchizedek, right, the son of Shem, which by itself doesn't answer the question, right? But it points in a direction. So if you look at Genesis Rabbah, the next text, which is a little bit of an older source, right? On Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Yefet. And wasn't Yefet the eldest? Although actually there are traditions where Shem is the eldest. People don't seem to agree about that. Some say that Shem was the priest because he was the firstborn. There's a tradition that before the elevation of the Kohanim, right, that the priest of a family or community was a firstborn. So some people say that's why Shem is a priest. This text says something else. And this text says he wasn't the eldest, but he was righteous. Right? You should first you should seek out that he was righteous. The one whom the blessed holy name associate the name with, he was born circumcised, which is a thing that they like to say about people like Moses. From whom Abraham was destined to descend, who served as high priest, and in whose territory the temple was built. So there's an earlier tradition here. This is a Jerusalem, the idea here is Jerusalem is important even before David goes there, right? And this is Shem's territory. Shem, by the way, is also supposed to be the prophet to whom Rebecca goes about her pregnancy. It says she went to see God, and there's a midrash that says it was Shem she went to talk to.
But between Noah and Abraham is the 10 generation.
Yes.
So
how could that be, right?
Sorry?
Right. So this is in a time period where people are living very, very long lives. This is like according to the early Genesis, right? Methuselah lives, 900 and odd years, right? Shem doesn't live that long, right? But he lives some period of hundreds of years. And they do the math and they show it. It doesn't make intuitive sense because human beings don't live that long in our experience, right? But for them, right, they are looking at the genealogy and saying, given how long Shem lived, right, he would have still been alive at the time of Abraham. Right. Yeah, yeah. I know. It's a mythological story, right? You have to take it as this is a supernatural story, right? And he's kind of a supernatural character. By the way, he founds a yeshiva. There's a place in a midrash called the Yeshivat Shem ve'Ever, the yeshiva of Shem and Ever. Ever is the son of Shem. And this yeshiva is where Isaac goes to study after the Akedah. Like when he kind of needs to get away from his father, and like he disappears from the text right after the Akedah. And the sages are like, well, where did he go? One of the answers is he went to the yeshiva of Shem and Ever to study. So he's not only a priest and a prophet, he's also a Rosh Yeshiva. All right. So I want to look a little bit more at this tradition of Shem. So if you look on page 3, could somebody give me a time check, please? I don't have my timepiece here.
Sorry, it's 9:07.
Thank you very much. If you look at Genesis Rabbah, this is an ancient Jewish midrash on page 3. We're going to hear a little bit in this midrash about the sage's imagination of this priesthood that Shem seems to have inherited. Where does this priesthood come from? Right, we've heard the firstborn story, right? What is the nature of this priesthood? Adam, who was the firstborn of the world, before La'olam, right? So this is like the firstborn tradition, I'm so sorry, everybody. Adam, who was the firstborn of the world, was the first to dress in priestly garments. As it is written, and God made for Adam and his wife garments of skin and clothed them. Actually, according to the way that they are reading the text, Eve is also in this tradition, right? Because they both have the garments. And it is written, he shall wear a holy linen tunic. So they're actually taking the word for the garment, katnot or, like garments of skin, and ketonet is the same as the main priestly garment. So they are taking the connection of these two words and saying, this is priesthood. This is priestly garments. So it's like, who is going to be the priest and priestess for Adam and Eve? There isn't anybody else, right? So they become the priest and priestess, right? They are the ones who do the rituals that connect the world to God. That's a neat idea, right? Yeah, please.
So isn't the moment when that happens when they're being cast out of Eden?
Yes.
So isn't that fascinating that
it is
that the idea that you would become a priest at the moment when you have betrayed what God has just told you?
That's really great. Does everybody online hear that? Right? There's a
we're good, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. That's an amazing point. It's not that different from Aaron and the golden calf, right? It's like priesthood is associated with fallible humanity. And it's like, it's only when you're separated from God in some way that you need a priest, right? That's beautiful. Thank you for that. I think that's really powerful. So they have these priestly garments, these katnot or. And God made for Adam and his wife garments of skin and clothed them. And it is written that he shall wear holy linen tunic. The first man, right, that is Adam, gave the garments to Eve. Right, so he dies before her. He transmits to her the priestly garments. So, Eve is Kohenet here. And Eve gives them to Methuselah. Right, so the longest living human being, right, that's who Eve transmits these priestly garments to. And Methuselah, who lives for, almost 1,000 years, keeps them. Huh? Thank you for that. 969 years. And he gives the garments to Noah. So we have here, it's like a priestly chain from Adam to Eve, from Eve to Methuselah, and from Methuselah to Noah, and Noah gives them to Shem, right, who is his firstborn. So according to this midrash, it's not even only that Shem has a priesthood, but he has inherited this priesthood from the first person, the first two people, actually, right? I think this is fascinating. It's like it implies that the sacred task of kind of tending the relationship between the worlds doesn't begin with Aharon. It doesn't begin with Avraham. It begins with the first people. And if you think about it historically, right, in a kind of, we're going to kind of abstract this, say that this is like a poetic way of talking about this, right? We know that's true, right? We know that there are people from before recorded history who were building sacred places, right? That this is something that is older than our memory as human beings, right? We know that. So there's a way that that's what they're saying, right? That, this tradition of priesting comes from way before like any of our traditions, right? It's older than that. So I find this really beautiful. So now what happens to the garments? Right, Eve gives them to, Noah gives them to Shem. As it is said, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. This is their proof text. Shem is Melchizedek. Melchizedek is a priest, right? So they're saying this is how we know through this text that this is who the priesthood, the first priesthood, the priesthood of creation, passed to. Shem gave them to Abraham, who gave them to Isaac, who gave them to Esau. Right? So he gives them to Esau. And when Isaac saw, right, that Esau's wives were practicing idolatry, this is a midrash about Esau's family. They don't like Esau. They're mean to him. They have, they see him as an interloper. He took them away from Esau and entrusted them to Rebekah. And when Jacob took the birthright from Esau, right, from Esau, Rivka said, since Jacob has taken the birthright, it is fitting that he should wear these garments. As it is written, and Rebekah took the garments of Esau. Jacob then went to his father and he smelled them. As it is written, and he smelled the smell of his garments, and Isaac smelled the same fragrance that had been sacrificed on the altar. So they're actually taking the story of deception, right, in which Rebekah takes Esau's clothing and gives it to Jacob so that Jacob will smell like his brother, right, and will fool his father. And the Midrash is saying that's not the only thing that's happening. The other thing that's happening is that this is a transmission of this ancient priesthood through the garments. And the fragrance of the garments that Isaac smells is not just the smell of his son, it's the smell of this priesthood. It's interesting that, again, it's around a deception, right? That, again, the priesthood and its garments are associated with something, right, that is deceiving. I have to think more about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to add on to your point, I think I would tie it back to the original text, if I could, that Melchizedek, I mean, I don't think you necessarily have to have this literal transmission. I think it's like a metaphor. But I think the way I would think about it is that, like, I think it's presumptuous to think that Abraham is the first human that God would choose in this way, or would have this relationship with, just going back to Noah and Adam and so on. And so I feel like what it's sort of saying is, like, there have been many other betrayals of God before now, not just the ones we know about. And you don't have to tie it back to Adam literally or to Noah literally to understand that. And so I think Melchizedek, and priesthood comes out of this notion of separation from God, right? You have closeness and then you have separation. And then once you have the separation, somehow that's tied up with creating priesthood, that there's a way back to God through this kind of priesthood thing. And that Melchizedek is part of that.
Part of that. Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you. I think that's really powerful. Thank you very much. I wonder if there are comments in the chat, because I can't see it online, if there's anything that might make sense to share into our Zoom room. I'm just pausing, and if there isn't, it's okay. Okay. All right. We will keep going.
It's also poetic, if you don't mind me saying.
It is poetic, certainly. You want to say more? What's poetic about it for you?
Just bringing in the idea of fragrance that had been sacrificed on the altar for some reason, that's poetry to me.
Yeah, it's powerful to think of Yitzhak taking in this fragrance that is from the first altar, that's sort of the fragrance of, it's ironic, actually. It's like the fragrance of union with the divine is what he's smelling, right, in this moment that's actually quite quite broken. He's smelling this thing that's so holy. Yeah, there is something very, very beautiful and poetic about that.
Isn't it confusing? I mean, that's confusing.
It is confusing. It is confusing.
What do you think?
I mean, I'm just extending what other people have said, but what I would make of it is that holiness exists in a broken world, right? And we can't, we shouldn't imagine, right, that when we are in the state of spiritual connection, that we don't also partake of that brokenness, right? That wholeness exists inside and intertwined with, something that's broken. I mean, I think, you said it well around priesthood and separation, right? But I think I would also say that being separated in bodies is a necessary fact of creation. And it's also what creates multiple perspectives. And that is what creates conflict also. So the very thing that makes us precious to the divine, right, is also the thing that causes us to try to deceive one another. And right. It's like Rabbi Nachman says, the flaw and the gift are the same. I feel like that applies here too.
I mean, what is also making me think, I don't know, which is confusing me, is I've had moments in my life where I felt like there was a synchronicity that was so powerful, and I took that direction, and in retrospect realized it really wasn't the right direction. And it makes me think of this moment, like where something's actually wrong, and part of me knew it was wrong, and yet it was so powerful, like, go do that. And it's almost like kind of cautioning to have, like there's that whole idea, like, we don't know what we don't know. And it's more complicated than it seems. And there's much you will never know. And maybe in those moments, even if it may be in those moments when it's so clear, it's actually the moment to think bigger,
Right.
It's not that simple.
Yeah. That applies, I think, to this story. And I see you, Richard. I'm going to come to you. That applies to this story in that this is how things are supposed to work out. Jacob is supposed to have the birthright, right? But he does it in this kind of awful way that follows him forever.
I see.
But he is supposed to be in this moment.
So maybe we are supposed to make mistakes, is what it is.
Yeah, maybe.
Like that moment is, go forth with this mistake, because what you're going to learn later is so much more important.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you. All right, I'm going to come to Richard, who's been waiting, and I'll come back to him.
Yes, Rabbi Jill, do we know anything about Salem as to why it was not involved in the War of the Kings, of the 5 kings versus the 4?
It's a really good question. I don't know anything about it. He's not mentioned as one of the combatants. I would, if I had to make a guess, if I was going to make some kind of midrashic guess, I would say, well, maybe this is a holy city. Maybe it doesn't engage in these sorts of things. We should only live in a world where that would be true, right? But maybe it's kind of an outlier city because of its status as a place of priests. But that's a guess. I don't know. I don't even know why Abraham has come to this king in particular. It's like he's come. It's almost like they brought him to do the armistice work. It's like they needed a neutral party, like to do the rituals to end this conflict, and he's who they brought. Like, I think maybe that's would be a guess that I would make.
One possibility along those lines is that Salem could be a name for Jerusalem and the Holy City.
Yeah, and definitely the tradition agrees with you on that. Please, and I'm going to come to Miriam and B,
Quick
but we'll
question.
start here.
You
Yeah.
quoted something by Rabbi Nachman. Could you repeat that quote?
Yeah.
And where I could find it?
I'm not sure I can help you find it at this exact moment, but but you can probably, I mean, you can Google it, and if it doesn't work, contact me. I'll help. But he says this about people. He says the gift in the soul is the same as the flaw in the soul, which I've always found to be intuitively true. Like the thing that the person is most like kind of extreme about, like most gifted at, is often the thing that also drives you crazy about them. You know, like that's I mean, I just find it to be true. Yeah. You know, and I also think it's such a beautiful thing to say. So it's like if you are dealing with something in yourself that is so painful, right, that might also be a source of the thing that you are most, you're most blessed in.
Yes.
I just think that's a really beautiful idea. Yeah, Miriam and I can't tell if it's Miriam or B, but whoever's raised your hand, please.
Hi, this is Miriam. Thank
Hi,
you.
Miriam.
Hi. Just have to move something. Yeah, I think what I'm feeling today, so what's capturing me too, is this all so much talk about smell and the memory of smell, the power of smell. And I always think about God and smell, and God wants to smell things. That's how we give by, I like that smell. I like that smell. And of course it's our most primal sense, we're told. And how that's passed for so many years through garments. It's like our God-like selves too, in our own connections with smell. And just like on a personal note, with this exile that we've been on from our home, and Dad died in it, and I miss so much his smell too, and we just came again to a new place yesterday that we had been to once with Dad and once after Dad died. And I'm so struck by the smells in this farmhouse. That's what's capturing me most, is the smell. And
Wow.
the clarity of the smell. Even though it's not our home smell, it's holding so much memory.
Thank you for that. Really powerful. Thank you, Miriam. Wow. Yeah.
From a physical point of view.
Can you come closer to the mic, please? Thank
Do
you.
you want to come up and kind of hang out near the mic? Yeah.
From a physical point of view of the five senses, the most primal sense is smell. And that's conducted through what's called the cranial nerve, called the olfactory nerve, which is the shortest nerve in the body from the brain to the nose.
Wow.
So when you smell something, it's transmitted very rapidly because the distance that the nerve to the brain is the shortest distance from any other sense that you have. So it's the most primal sense that people have.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Wow.
Just talking this way makes me feel emotional, because I think the sense of smell plays such a major role in our lives, and we take it for granted. We don't think about it that much. But it's so significant in so many ways.
Beautiful. Thank you. One more, and then I want to add another piece to this story.
Just, I was really struck by this notion of the combination of smell and deception. So it's like, on the one hand, you can say that, like, what God is interested in these smells, like a pleasing odor, right? And so, like, the scent of a holy sacrifice is the most highest smell that there is. It's the most holy thing. On the other hand, I could see how to a human, and so like the scent of that holiness could be like the closest you can get to God. Like any more closer than that, and you would be too holy, right? So as a priest, as we're talking about separation from holiness, like I feel like the smell is a similar kind of separation from the thing itself. Like the scent, the wafting, microchemicals, whatever it is like kind of like this like residue of holiness that is like the closest we can get. On the other hand, I feel like in Isaac and Jacob and Esau's case, like the smell is this also the smell of deception. And so I feel like this distancing from the thing itself also means that you can smell holiness, but it's not the real thing in a way. It's like,
well, it isn't
it is
here.
and it isn't at the same time.
Right, because Jacob is the legitimate heir.
Is the legitimate heir.
And
right. Right. So I just keep thinking about how
yeah,
smells can also be used to deceive us because they're so close, because it's so instinctual.
Thank you for
perfumes, that. The whole idea of
right,
yeah.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So it's like a true holy scent versus a deceptive one.
I was actually at a fragrance museum once. It's in Berkeley. There's a fragrance museum, and it talks about the whole history of perfume. And there's you open all the drawers, and they all smell different. It's awesome. You should go there. There's one more piece that I want to add to this story about this priesthood, which is that Abraham's family marries into this original priesthood, or not exactly marries. So if we fast forward a little bit, right? Abraham and Sarah have Isaac, right? Isaac has Jacob and Esau. Jacob has 12 sons and a daughter. And one of Jacob's sons is Judah, right? Judah is the child and then the tribe that's going to give rise to the monarchy, right? To the Davidic monarchy and then to the Messiah. So where do Judah's children come from? Well, his first children die, right? His children by Bathshua, by a woman who's a local woman. He has a surviving child, Shelah, and then he has two other children. Those children come from Tamar. Right? Tamar, right, is a woman who's betrothed to his sons, and then they die. He's supposed to give his third son to marry her, and then he doesn't. Right? And she creates a deception, right, whereby he thinks that she's Kadesha, right, a sacred prostitute, right, and he has sex with her, and she becomes pregnant, right, and he accuses her of adultery, and then she brings out the things that he's given her, which are things that personally identify him, and says, "This is the father of my child." So he doesn't execute her, right, and she has these two children, one of whom becomes the ancestor of the Davidic line. Tamar doesn't have a father's name in Genesis. Like mostly when you see a woman's name, which you don't even see very often, mostly her father's name is listed. Tamar does not have a father's name. Many traditions say, but we'll look at this one from Agadat Bereshit, but there are many traditions about this at the bottom of page 3, that Tamar is the daughter of Shem. So she's the daughter of Gesundheit. She's the daughter of Melchizedek. So that's a big generational leap, right? For her to be the daughter of Melchizedek, right? Who's like Shem, who's like 900 years old. But she is understood as his daughter, and that Judah seeks her out as a wife for his sons because of this lineage. So look what it says on Agadat Bereshit. I couldn't believe I found this at the bottom of page 3. Yep. On the bottom of page 3, which says Agadat Bereshit. So this is a midrash from like the 9th or 10th century. The Tamar haita bito shel Shem. Tamar was the daughter of Shem. Shehi kohenet bito shel Shem ben Noach. She was a priestess, the daughter of Shem, the son of Noah. Couldn't believe I found this. Right? So according to all of these traditions, Tamar is a bat Kohen, right? She's the daughter of a priest. And this is hinted at, I hate saying this, but according to the Midrash, this is hinted at because Judah when he wants to kill her, right, because he thinks that she's had sex with somebody else, which she has, it's him, right? When he wants to kill her, he wants to burn her. And the only women who are subject to burning for adultery are daughters of priests in later on in the Torah. So that's how they get this. I hate telling you that, but that's where they get it from. But here it calls her a Kohenet, like it calls her a priestess, right? Because she comes from this lineage. And she was the daughter of Shem, son of Noah, right? As it says, the Malchit Tzedek, Melech Salem. So this is her lineage, right? She comes from this ancient lineage of the garments of Adam, right? And she marries into this family. So that means, right, that the Davidic line inherits this priesthood. And in fact, there is a text that says that the sons of David serve as priests. Like there is actually a text that says that in the Bible. And it means the messianic line comes from this lineage, right? So it's a joining of, I mean, in the way it's the same lineage, because Abraham is also a descendant of Shem, right? But it's a joining of, right, these threads, right, that come from creation. So I think that's really powerful that the specific Israelite Jewish tradition is woven into this original priesthood of creation. I found very powerful. Marilyn, I see your hand is up. Please go ahead.
No, just one small little thing. I was thinking when doesn't Judas say to her, you're right, but was the word tzedek,
Right.
like, does he actually invoke the tzedek there,
Yeah.
which could go back to Melchizedek? I wonder if that's where they're doing the link, like.
So good. So let me unpack. So when Tamar, right, I told you about the scene where Tamar is brought out to be burned, right, and Judah, and she gives these items to Judah, and he says, "Sadkami many." She's more righteous than I, right? She's the one who's in the right. And the word tzedkah, right, that she was right, it comes from tzedek. And here is, his name is Melchi Tzedek. I actually have never seen that in the sources. I think that's amazing. Thank you for that. That's a really great connection between those two scenes. So I guess we have where I want to end. Turn to page 6. Let's go all the way to page 6. Oh, no, actually, sorry, turn to page 5. So if you look in the center here, there's a line in Psalms that's very mysterious. And it says, Nishba Hashem v'lo yinachem, God has sworn and will not annul it, will not relent. Ata kohen le'olam, you are a priest forever. He's actually talking to the royal house. You are a priest forever. Al divrati Melchizedek. According to the decree, according to my decree, like Melchizedek. And scholars are kind of confused. Some scholars think that it should say Melech Tzedek, you're a righteous king, and this is some kind of mistake. I know that the Mormon tradition makes a lot about this, like they have a priesthood of Aaron and a priesthood of Melchizedek. And like it's a little confusing. Like, why is he saying this to the Davidic line that you're like Melchizedek? But of course, Melchizedek is the king of Salem, is the king of Jerusalem, right? So he's an ancestor. And if you look at Ibn Ezra, right? Ibn Ezra is a medieval exegete who is particularly interested in the pshat, in the literal meaning of the text. He's trying to find out, like, not just what does the Midrash say, but what does the text really say? And he says, God, and as a result, he says very radical things, because he says things that are counter to the Midrash. And he says, God has sworn to David that you are a Kohen. All priests serve, and so too the sons of David were priests, and the meaning is to serve God. Like, what is he saying? He's saying, if you serve God, that is a kind of kehuna. That is a kind of priesthood. And if you are a king, right, and you serve God in that way, right, that is a kind of priesthood. So essentially he's saying there's not only Aaronite priests who serve in a Levitical way, right, who serve in the temple. Anyone who is an Eved or, right, an Ovedet Hashem, right, anyone who is a servant of the divine, right, has a priesthood. right? I think that's what Ibn Ezra is saying. Right? He says, and the meaning is la'avod et Hashem, right? Is to do service to God. And he then goes on to say, how do kings do this, right? They take a tithe from what they, from battles that they win. But I think that this is so powerful, right? That he says the example of Melchizedek shows us that there are many ways to be a priest or a priestess or a priestess, right? That if you are in a role of, if you have found a role of creating connection in the world, right, then you have a priesthood. And it's a radical thing to say because the Leviticus is really clear, like there is a priesthood, this is it, right? But Ibn Ezra is saying, no, there are multiple priesthoods, right? There are multiple ways that you can be of service to God. And I just find, and that in some ways we all have inherited, right, this priesthood of creation, right? These garments, right, have come to, right, can come down in many different ways. So I'm really touched by that. And by the way, Maimonides says something very similar. And if you look, and I think this is probably the last thing we have time for, but if you look on your last page, wait, yes, last page, the very last text. No. So this is from the Mishnah Torah, Rambam's Law Code. And it's at the very end, he's discussing the sabbatical year and the Jubilee. It's at the very end of that section. He kind of goes off on a tangent. And he says this, not only of the tribe of Levi, but any one of the inhabitants of the world whose spirit generously motivates them, and they understand with their wisdom to set themselves aside and stand before God, to serve God and minister to God and know God, proceeding justly as God made them, removing from their neck the yoke of the many reckonings that people seek, meaning putting aside worldly ambitions. They are sanctified as holy of holies. God will be their portion and heritage forever, and will provide what is sufficient for them in this world, like God provides for the priests and the Levites. And thus David declared, God is the lot of my portion. You are my cup. You support my lot. Blessed is the merciful one who provides assistance. And you can see here that Rambam is talking about himself, right? Because he has dedicated his entire life to Torah. He's not a Kohen, right? He's not even a rabbi in the sense that we think of rabbi, right? He's not prayer leading. He was a doctor, right? That was what he did all week. And I mean, if you read his notes, it's insane. Like all week he's in the royal harem being the doctor, and then on Shabbat, all he does is see people who want to talk to him about Torah. I don't even know when he wrote. I guess in the middle of the night. So you can see that he's talking about himself, right? He's saying not right. You don't have to be in a right. He honors that role. Of course, he has a lot to say about the priests and the Levites, right? But he also thinks that this is a wider category, and he doesn't even only say Jews. He says ish mikol ba'ei olam, anybody in the world, right, who dedicates themselves to God. Anybody can be a priest, right? And to me, that really connects back to, right, we've inherited the garments of this priesthood from the very first people. So that's really what I came to share.
Nice.
And I think, we have 5 minutes. So I see that Jay's hand is raised. So Jay, please.
Thank you. I think what Ibn Ezra started is very radical.
Yes.
Sociologists makes the distinction between what's called achieved and ascribed statuses. In our tradition, Kohen and Levites are an ascribed status. It's by familial lineage. You're simply born to it. Now, what is being said here is that it can be an achieved status through your merits, through what you do, through how you serve. You too can be a priest. And so I think that's what's really cracking it all open.
Yeah, it is quite radical. It is true in the book of Samuel that there are people who become priests, even though it doesn't happen according to Leviticus. Samuel serves as a priest. He's not a Levite. Right? There are other people in the text who serve as priests early on who are not Levites. Right? It was clearly a more eclectic phenomenon, right? That became like, something much more delineated, right? And lineage based. But so we're going back to, I think in some ways, to an earlier version of what it means, right? To do sacred service. But in his time, Ibn Ezra is absolutely being radical in what he's saying. Right. But of course, he was in a world where rabbis could be, right? People could become rabbis or chazanim, right? And that was, that wasn't necessarily hereditary. Please.
I also remembered the temple was destroyed while the rabbis pushed to radicalize the entire religion. It changed 180. And I never got an answer before, but you actually came on something today that we all became priests, and it's all coming out here. It's amazing. So thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, it does say in Exodus that you should be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, right? So, wow. Well, oh yeah, one more. I think we have time for one more, please.
Also one more over Zoom, please.
I didn't get that.
Can we also have one more over Zoom, please?
Okay, great. So we'll take these last two.
Okay, thank you.
I think what Maimonides was doing was expounding on something that's written in the Talmud, in the Tractate of Avodah Zorah, that says that God hears everybody's prayers, if they're, true of heart, that they really believe. And I think Maimonides here is expounding on that. And it says, whether in the Talmud, it says that regardless of whether you're Jewish or not, if you're true of heart, God hears your prayers. And Maimonides expanded on that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead, Brenda.
So I'm gonna see if I can universalize it even more. So if you start from the beginning in Genesis, where we're said that it were made in the image and likeness of God, all of us. So we all have that ability to be godlike, which to me means to create in some way something, to use our unique gifts to give to the world. So yeah, again, it's beyond any priestly lineage. And if you say that Adam was the first, he's all of humankind also, right? We all are descendants of that. So we all have what Adam has. We all have that likeness and image of God in us. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Very beautiful. And that's a great, very briefly. Go ahead.
I'm also a sociologist, and I find Karl Marx very spiritual, and that's what he says. that all of us, like that ideal society we create on behalf of the other, which of course is Levinas also, and all that, that so much of, even though he was like really not into religion, it's such a spiritual text that we all have a very specific spiritual, you don't say spiritual, but gift. And we need to give to others, not to make money, but separate. That's the connection between people that everything should be based on. So I'm very grateful.
Nice.
Thank you for that. Well, thank you, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Yasher Koach, Rav.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a great